The following program does not offer personal medical advice. Please consult your doctor before using any treatment or product we cover. Welcome to Go to Health Media with your host, Jonathan Marks. We provide a welcoming environment where experts educate you on important health topics, answer your questions, and provide information from which you can benefit in consultation with your doctor. You can visit and subscribe to the show at gotohealthmedia.com. And now, here is Jonathan Marks. Hey everyone, welcome back to another show of Go to Health. We're so glad you're here with us today. Remember, you can watch us on our website at gotohealthmedia.com. You can watch us on YouTube, and you can also listen to us on 8 podcast networks. We do encourage you to subscribe at our website. That way you will not miss any of the shows we do because they are all wonderful. We love to interview health experts from around the world. So today's topic. A lot of people are going through a hard time right now, either physically, financially, psychologically, or even spiritually. Are you going through a hard time, or do you know someone who is? We have an interesting guest to talk about this with you today, so stay tuned. We have doctors who can help us physically or psychologically. We have financial advisors who can help us with money. We have career counselors who can help us find a job. We have clergy who can guide us in our particular religion. But did you know there's such a thing as spiritual care? That there are professionals who can take care of our spirit? So many of us think about our bodies first, and that includes our physical body, our emotions, and our intellect. But somewhere in there is a soul, and the soul needs care as well. Integrative spiritual care services can include pastoral counseling, guided meditation, prayer, movement, expressive arts, and other modalities. Spiritual care especially honors your cultural needs. Spiritual care is a valuable source of support and resilience, including for those who identify as religious, spiritual but not religious, multi-religious, interfaith, agnostic, and yes, even atheist. Everyone can benefit from spiritual care regardless of your religious beliefs. We have a spiritual advisor with us as our guest today, and I felt her perspective could be useful to us as we encounter difficult days. Karen Lee Erlichman, Doctor of Ministry and LCSW, provides psychotherapy, spiritual direction, mentoring, and supervision, and is co-chair of the Professional Advisory Group for the Spiritual Care Services Department at UCSF Medical Center in San Francisco. Dr. Erlichman was a medical social worker for 10 years and has been in private practice for several decades with a focus on integrative wellness. She is a trained facilitator with the Center for Courage and Renewal, and she sees clients both in person and virtually. You can learn more about her at KarenErlichman.com, and Erlichman is spelled ErlichMan, KarenErlichman.com. So welcome to the show today, Karen Erlichman. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you for inviting me to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you here because it's such a tough time. So many people are having such a hard time, and I really wanted to include your approach as we think about going to health. So, what makes spiritual care part of healthcare? Can you explain that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think the easiest way I can explain it to you is the moment when I realized that spirituality or spiritual wellness is part of healthcare. And that is about 35 years ago. I was working as a medical social worker here in San Francisco, and I was working on a research project about women who use crack cocaine during pregnancy. It was the
Mm.
90s when, at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic.
Yes.
And one of the tools that we used in this research project was a social support assessment that basically asked the pregnant women who were participating in the study who was in their social support system. And the data we got back was so astonishing to me because so many people had burned bridges in relationships and there'd been so much trauma, but like two-thirds of them put down God or a higher power as part of their social support system.
Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. And I remember thinking at that moment, this is really important. I'm not sure why this is important, but I just had this feeling like this is important. I want to remember this. And that kind of planted the seed for me that here are these women. Pregnancy is often a time when women will take care of themselves for the sake of the health of the baby in ways that they might not take care of their own health because of trauma and poverty and other factors.
Hmm.
And so it was a real window of opportunity for us to hear their stories and to hopefully have a positive impact. And so that really stayed with me. And I thought, well, if I'm asking people about their psychological history, I'm asking people what they eat, how they sleep, about addiction or eating disorders, I can ask them about their spirituality too.
Hmm. Hmm. So is this relevant for people who don't even consider themselves religious?
Oh, definitely relevant.
How
Like,
so?
so people define spirituality in so many different ways, and many people would define themselves as spiritual but not religious.
Hmm.
And there probably are a handful of people who describe themselves as religious, but not necessarily spiritual, because they might associate spiritual with, woo woo, crystals, astrology,
Hmm.
things that don't feel true to them,
Hmm.
but they may come from many generations of religious affiliation or community participation, and that is what has meaning for them.
Hmm.
So for me, when I am exploring that with somebody, I'm not asking them about their theology unless that's what they want to talk about. It's really about meaning making and creativity and things inside and outside themselves that they may not be able to explain, but they sense and trust.
Good. So you work even with people who are atheist or agnostic?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Really?
As part of my regular like assessment with people when I'm working with somebody one on one, I ask them, did you grow up with a particular religion or spiritual practice? And do you have a spiritual practice now? And sometimes people say, well, I definitely I don't believe in God and I don't belong
Hmm.
to a congregation, but I have a very dedicated yoga practice, and
Mm.
the yoga studio is my spiritual community.
Hmm.
Other people will say, well, I find spirituality in nature. Like they're not thinking about prayer or rules or even something that we might call God, but it is about feeling connected in some broader, deeper way.
And tell us, what does a typical spiritual direction session look like? What do you cover? What do you do? What happens? What do people get out of it? I know that's a big question, but
No,
just so
it's a
we can,
great question. That's
yeah,
a
just so
great
we can
question.
have people understand more and understand about the potential opportunities that they can take advantage of.
Absolutely. A little background. When after working as a medical social worker for 10 years and seeing also what chaplain's role was in the healthcare setting, I did contemplate, do I want to become a chaplain? And I decided not to pursue that path because I really wanted to walk with people on their spiritual journeys in whatever place they found themselves in their lives.
Hmm.
Could be end of life or a difficult illness or grief, but it could also be, the developmental stages of aging. It could be having their first child. It could be they've left the religion of their childhood behind, but they want to have some sense of spirituality, or maybe they've gotten into an interfaith relationship. So those might be some of the catalysts for someone to seek out spiritual direction.
Hmm.
And so for me, like as a non-ordained layperson, I'm not coming with like the handbook. I'm not coming with like the rules and the right way to do things. It really is a place for someone to say, like, what do I care about? And what gives me that sense of connection and purpose deeper than who I am told I am supposed to be?
Hmm.
And are there any specific practices that might support me in staying connected to that part of myself?
What do you cover in a session? What does that look like?
Yes. So, how a session might begin is I often will say to people, is there any particular way you might like to get centered? Like, there are some people who will just, some spiritual directors will drop right into praying. I don't want to start praying if somebody's not into prayer. That would be so off-putting. So I
Hmm.
might say, how would you like to begin? And sometimes people will say, I don't know. Like that's such an open question. I think that people are not always sure. But some
Yes.
people will say, oh my God, I would love to just sit in some silence. I have such a busy, noisy life. And we'll sit in some silence, or I might read a poem, or especially if I'm working with someone virtually, because I see people in person as well as virtually, the gift of Zoom is I can play music. I can do that in person too,
Yes.
but that's like a really lovely way for people who really feel connected spiritually through music. So we just might begin the session with something before we get to conversation.
Got it. And then the conversations can go what are people, what kind of content do people share, or what kind of conversations do you have?
So, like in this particular political moment that we're living in, for
Hmm.
example, I have a number of people who are really wrestling with what we might call questions of faith, like really believing in the goodness of humanity, but seeing evidence to the contrary.
Hmm.
Really wrestling with that kind of in an ethical, spiritual way. Like, how do I make peace with that? What is mine to do? So, in spiritual direction, we talk a lot about discernment as a practice. And if someone comes with that question of like, I feel so overwhelmed by what's happening in the world, I don't know what I should be doing to make a difference. I'm not going to tell them what they should be doing.
Sure.
What we might do in the session is explore what that might be so that they come to that place in themselves, that feeling like that something is a yes inside yourself. That, I might ask some questions and guide them a little, but I like to think of it as asking questions that I could not possibly know the answer to.
Hmm, interesting. And you mentioned before discernment. Can you tell us a little bit more what you mean when you say discernment? What is that?
Yeah. So discernment is sometimes seen as synonymous with decision making, and they are related, but not exactly the same. So discernment is a practice, like it's actually an active, engaged practice of accessing your inner knowing, the part of us that actually knows, like why you decided to wear the tie that you're wearing today.
Hmm.
It could have been because you set it out the night before. It could be because it didn't need to be ironed or it was clean. It didn't have to be like a very philosophical reason. But there's a feeling of, oh, yeah, that'll work. And it's just like a split second of a feeling. And we're so unaccustomed to paying attention to that feeling
Mm.
and having access to it. So for some people they who are more religious, they might say discernment is connecting to God's will for me. And for other people that's not their theology or it's not how they think. They might refer to that as their inner knowing or their intuition.
So what I just picked up out of that is that spiritual direction can really help put people in touch with the decisions they make in their lives and getting a better understanding of why they make them
Yeah.
and what's driving it. And is there a theme that's going on there they should be more aware of?
And the feeling of it. And when I think about this in the context of healthcare, the number of decisions that people have to make just about everyday wellness, not even, catastrophic things or, chronic illness or things like that, but just like I want spirituality to feel like as accessible to people as the way you just get up and brush your teeth in the morning because that's what you do. And so when people are having the experience of navigating their physical or emotional health, that requires some changes in behavior, changes in thinking, changes in the way they're accessing resources, that they're able to connect to the part of themselves that either gives them courage or motivation or the capacity to trust or connect to community.
And we pay so much attention to the health of our bodies, the health of our minds, but the health of our spirit. Can you say a little bit more about how people get in touch with that, or if they even can't see it or can't feel it, don't believe it? I mean, how do people, what's your experience and how people get in touch with what their spirit actually is?
That's such a great question. I think creativity is a part of it for some people. It's accessing our right brain, if you want to think about it neurologically. It's
Hmm.
about stories and metaphor and symbol and the senses. Like one of the things I'm doing with people a lot now because there's so much stress and anxiety
Hmm.
is using our senses as a way to calm and soothe the nervous system. And which is your sight, your smell, your taste, your touch, and you're listening.
Hmm.
And all of those five senses have spiritual practices that have engaged them, like probably in every single culture, like, you know, churches that burn incense or lighting candles or breathing exercises, or, for some people that is really connecting to religious practices. But for other people, it's just taking a moment to recall like a smell that has a very positive memory for them.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
don't actually have to be holding the flower or the freshly baked cookie in your hand to access the feeling that comes with that positive association.
Very good. That's a great metaphor. I love that. So if people want to learn more, I have a couple more questions, but if people want to learn more and even possibly work with you, that you have a website and it's KarenErlichman.com. And let me spell Erlichman. It's Karen as usual. And Erlichman is Erlichman. Erlichman. I got that right?
Yep, you got it.
Good. So it's KarenErlichman.com, or you can also reach her on LinkedIn. She's there under Karen Ehrlichman. So, Karen, tell us a little bit more about how spiritual care is worked into healthcare systems and how it's really considered a part of healthcare.
Great question. I really see spiritual care as part of multidisciplinary healthcare team. And that's not just me. The Joint Commission also recognizes spiritual care as part of healthcare. And sometimes that's with chaplains. And there are some people who are not comfortable working with the chaplain because they are concerned that it's not going to be like a good fit, or they feel like someone's going to impose religious beliefs on them, even though I don't think that's the way chaplains are being trained these days. They're hopefully being trained to work with all kinds of people, including atheists and people who identify as spiritual but not religious. Navigating the healthcare system is so challenging right now, and it can really create feelings of hopelessness and frustration and even despair sometimes.
Hmm.
And spiritual care, one, is a great support. Like a spiritual care provider will really advocate for people, even around very basic stuff. And also, spiritual care helps people to have the capacity to find their voice and to speak up for themselves and to hopefully get the care that they need.
And you mentioned before the Joint Commission. What is that for people who don't know?
The Joint Commission is the large accreditation body that oversees healthcare institutions. They
Mm.
evaluate them, they determine their qualifications for funding and support. They usually go into licensed healthcare facilities like every couple of years and do an on site assessment. They want to make sure that nobody's putting their tuna fish sandwich in the refrigerator that has the blood samples. But they also are
Right.
looking at the chart notes to see are people, are things being recorded properly? And they do set some standards for care, not just for the nurses and physicians, but social workers and chaplains and the pharmacists. So they really oversee the accreditation of healthcare institutions. And they have very specific guidelines about spiritual care that are really about whole person care.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's the point I wanted to make sure people understand is that the Joint Commission really does consider spirituality as part of healthcare. Yeah,
They really do.
good, good, good.
But not in a religious way. They're not
Yes.
saying you have to believe in God or that you have to pray or that healthcare institutions should be imposing that on people.
Hmm.
They're just saying this is part of what it means to be alive as a human being, and this really does impact people's wellness. And for example, like we now have all this research that shows that mindfulness meditation can improve people's cardiac health and their endocrine system, their immune system. Like we now have data that shows the connection between spiritual practice and physical well-being.
Great. That's wonderful. So, Karen, what message would you like to leave people with today? What would you like them to walk away and remember?
Good question. I hope that people walk away with a feeling that spirituality is something that's accessible to them and that spiritual direction is a resource that is really like someone companioning them on the journey,
Hmm.
an opportunity to explore that part of themselves without worrying about doing it right, a way to connect to where they come from, but also a way to be curious about where they are and where they're going.
And just one final question that came to me as you were answering that question. What's a good stimulus that people should be aware of for them to think that that spiritual direction might be a help for them?
Oh, so many come to mind. I guess my first thought is a stimulus is if someone has had an experience that they can't explain, but they're curious about, like an experience either of synchronicity or a dream or something that like kind of sparked their sense of wonder that they might want to explore a little more deeply. So something positive. Oftentimes people seek out spiritual care around something painful, and that's true, but also sometimes people have some transcendent experience and they think, I don't know if I can talk to somebody else about that. They're going to think that this is crazy, but sometimes they're having a spiritual experience, and that might be the catalyst as well.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your expertise and your insights. I think this is such an important time for people to be more in touch spiritually with themselves. These are challenging times, as you said before. And Karen is available to work with you either in person. Your office is in San Francisco, is that right?
Yes.
Good. Or online through Zoom. So she's got clients from all over the place. Karen Erlichman, and that's ERLICHMAN. KarenErlichman.com is where you can find her. Thanks so much for being with us today, Karen.
Thanks, Jonathan.
It was good to see you again. And remember, everybody, you can watch us on YouTube. You can visit us at our website at gotohealthmedia.com and opt in so you don't miss any of our shows. And you can also listen to us on 8 podcast networks. So thanks so much for being with us again today. We really appreciate your listenership and viewership. And remember, as we say at the end of every show, go to health. Take care. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye, and God bless. Thank you for tuning in this week to Go to Health Media. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks and another health expert next time. You can also catch the program on your favorite podcast platform. Until our next show, be sure to visit us on the web at gotohealthmedia.com and elevate your life.